Have you ever wondered if our furry companions are capable of expressing their gratitude in more ways than just a gentle purr? Many people probably believe that cats only say thank you by snuggling up close. But there's a different reality out there. A heartwarming story that unfolded in a small town in Montana, vividly demonstrating that the possibilities within the feline world are far broader than we commonly think. A bobcat in disguise, how it all began. In a quaint little town nestled amidst the sprawling landscapes of Montana, lived a solitary old woman named Agnes Abernathy. Over the years, she had gained a reputation for being a kind soul who couldn't turn a blind eye to tiny, homeless kittens. That's why she ended up with 5 cats in her care. It wasn't as if she intentionally collected these furry creatures, but whenever she saw a hungry, vulnerable animal on the street, her heart ached, and she would take the little one home. After rescuing yet another kitten, Agnes meticulously nursed her new find, treating any ailments, feeding it, keeping it warm, and creating every condition for the animal to find peace and comfort in its new home. Of course, Agnes didn't expect any special gratitude in return. It was enough for her to hear the quiet purrs and feel the warm presence in her house. However, fate had a truly astonishing surprise in store for her. Over time, this elderly woman had tamed a total of 5 cats, all living under one roof and feeling like rightful owners of the wooden house. Each of them had their unique personality, with their own distinct habits and quirks. Some loved to sleep on the cold windowsill, others tried to hide under the warm stove, and one had a fondness for fluffy balls of yarn. However, the last cat, the 5th one, the youngest, whom she had saved from certain death late in the fall, looked at her with the most adoring eyes. This fluffy little rascal constantly followed Agnes around, purring happily whenever she reached out to pet him gently. Furry ball number 6. But when yet another helpless kitten turned up on the street, Agnes couldn't bring herself to walk past. It didn't take much to convince herself. The old woman's heart melted as soon as she heard the plaintive meows and saw the wary eyes of the gray bundle. As if sensing her kindness, he was the first to come forward, reaching out with his tiny paw. Well, so be it, Agnes thought, and took the little creature home, without even considering that one more little mouth to feed would add to her worries. At first glance, the creature looked no different from any ordinary stray kitten. The same curious gaze, the same tousled ears, and a fluffy tail. But as time went on, the new find surprised everyone with how quickly he grew. It seemed that every week he gained strength and size. The neighbors began to whisper, "Could it be a Maine Coon? Looks like a fancy gentleman with some pedigree." Some even suggested that the owners of a purebred descendant might have carelessly lost him, and he, exhausted and hungry, ended up in the hands of the kind old woman. Strange suspicions. A workat? Meanwhile, the gray stranger had a ferocious appetite. Neighbors watched sideways. That cat is growing way too fast, and the way it looks isn't kind but predatory. And our old friend's house isn't as welcoming as it used to be, since the doors here are usually left unlocked. But now something strange has happened. In the town, there was a custom not to lock the front doors, allowing guests to freely come for tea. This tradition had taken root long ago, and the locals didn't see any problem with it. They had always lived in harmony and helped each other. But one day, dishonest people broke into Agnes' house, whom the locals aptly called outright scoundrels. They decided to take advantage of the trust and the lack of locks. The thugs probably thought that the old woman lived alone and wouldn't be able to protect either her property or herself. But they didn't count on one thing. The new kitten was long gone from being a cute, helpless baby and resembled a wild animal ready to defend its territory. Heroic act. When the cat bares its teeth and claws. When the villains sneaked into the house, thinking that they would get away with everything, the gray creature was on alert. He pounced on the uninvited guests, hissing threateningly and showing sharp fangs that seemed stronger than those of ordinary domestic purr machines. The bandits didn't expect such resistance. One of them screamed in pain, and the other tried to escape, but the cat caught up with him and showed off its sharp claws. The hapless robbers even called for their accomplices to help, but they got their share too. The gray defender of the house snarled fiercely, giving them not the slightest chance. Meanwhile, the police, whom someone from the neighbors had managed to call, quickly arrived on the scene and took the scoundrels into custody. What a twist, the town thought, amazed at the bravery of Agnes' unusual pet. At first, the police couldn't believe that one single cat, and a young one at that, had managed to scare off an entire gang. But the facts spoke for themselves. The robbers had deep scratches and bite marks. As a result, it turned out that this mysterious gray cat had literally done half the job for the police. He had detained the perpetrators and prevented them from escaping, protecting Agnes' house at his own risk. It seemed he didn't become a recidivist cat. He acted as a true hero. Bobcat, unraveling the origin of the fearsome beast. After this incident, everyone started wondering why the new kitten had such impressive strength, where his inexplicable composure and drive to protect the territory came from. When specialists and wildlife experts intervened, things became much clearer. It turned out that this beast belonged to a rare breed. He was a bobcat, a wildcat native to North America. Bobcats are unusual animals. They have a stocky build, dense fur, and short legs, as well as very large claws and fangs. Compared to an ordinary domestic cat, their weaponry is much more impressive. A bobcat's teeth can reach 3 centimeters in length, and the animal itself often grows up to 65 centimeters, not counting its thick tail. Of course, these physical features make a bobcat a real warrior in feline form. Agnes' other pets were quite wary of the sixth resident. At first, they avoided him, hiding in the far corners of the room, and some hissed when the gray newcomer passed by. And no wonder. Cats have a very delicate sense of smell, and they apparently unerringly sensed the wild origins of their neighbor. Some even thought that they were jealous of the increased attention the owner was giving to the newcomer, but most likely fear was the main factor here. After all, a bobcat is not just a cat, but a real predator, known for its sharp temper and natural ferocity. However, as history has shown, this wild nature can turn into loyal protection for those who feed and love the unusual animal. Living with a bobcat in a domestic setting. It should be understood that bobcats are freedom-loving inhabitants of harsh regions. In their natural environment, they inhabit steppes, mountain areas, and plains, preferring to stay away from human dwellings. Thanks to their dense fur with a dense undercoat, bobcats are not afraid of even extreme cold. But living in a heated room can be unusual for them. Sometimes they get hot, and then the animal looks for cool corners to hide. Experts emphasize that taming a bobcat is rare, because these cats are extremely wary of people. But, as the Montana case shows, there are exceptions. Agnes, of course, didn't know that she had sheltered a wild animal. As usual, she offered him the same menu as the other pets: soups, bread, cutlets. And, oddly enough, the bobcat willingly ate what his savior offered. Usually, bobcats in the wild hunt small rodents and birds, not always interested in larger game, let alone prepared food. However, changes in diet don't seem to have affected the health of the exotic kitty at all. He continued to grow, get stronger, and even showed incredible loyalty. Such an unusual alliance, a rural grandmother and a wild North American beast, might seem absurd, but reality often exceeds all expectations. Ferocity or loyalty? What is the nature of a bobcat? Many scientists note that the bobcat has a rather complex temper. This animal is capable of showing aggression if it feels threatened. In the wild, they rarely make contact with humans, and some researchers argue that even when kept in zoos, bobcats do not always become friendly. Their character can be described as independent, proud, and sometimes harsh. But the story with Agnes shows that, under certain circumstances and with a kind attitude, even the most closed cat is able to thaw and repay care with gratitude and devotion. There are opinions that the aggression of bobcats is a defense mechanism that helps them survive in conditions of food shortage and constant threat from larger predators or a hostile environment. When a bobcat encounters a person who does not wish him harm and provides shelter, warmth, and food, the animal may gradually recognize him as one of his own. Moreover, if a bobcat grows up next to a person and from small claws sees the owner as a protector, the chances of a more or less harmonious coexistence increase. Of course, there is no guarantee that the wild cat will remain affectionate forever, But in Agnes' case, the story ended better than ever. Africans tame hyenas, and Montana residents live with bobcats? It's funny that in some countries, for example, in some parts of Africa, people often tame animals that seem completely unsuitable for domestic life. For example, there are domesticated hyenas, strong, dangerous-looking predators, whom no one in other parts of the world would think of keeping as a domestic pet. However, culture and lifestyle affect a lot. Even hyenas become beloved helpers and loyal companions for some Africans. Can a bobcat, with a predatory temper and sharp claws, like a hyena, adapt to life with humans? Judging by the story from Montana, it is quite possible. After all, the wild animal that defended the old woman's house did not abandon her in trouble and proved that even a harsh character can be directed for good. In addition, we should not forget about the contribution of Agnes herself. She surrounded her cats with love and attention, never skimped on food, patiently cared for them, and showed sincere affection. All this certainly formed trust and understanding between the person and the bobcat, which led to this outcome. The cat prevented a robbery and saved Agnes from great trouble. A small town, big miracles. An additional look at the case. According to some locals, this case has become a real town legend. People tell tourists and curious visitors about the gray werewolf who fearlessly pounced on armed robbers. Subsequently, as they say, one of the wildlife researchers wanted to take the bobcat for more thorough study or transfer him to a reserve where he could live a normal life. However, Agnes refused to part with her new protector because it is no longer just an animal, but a member of the family. They say that the employees of environmental organizations did not insist, given that the animal does not show aggression to the owner, and the very fact of his presence in a domestic environment does not cause harm to anyone. However, it is possible that someday there may be stricter laws regulating the keeping of wild animals in domestic conditions. Now, this cute bobcat, as neighbors assure, continues to live in the same house. True, the old woman has become more careful about the temperature of the room. She tries not to overheat the stove so that the animal is not too hot. And the bobcat himself is looking for cool places, settling on the floor or at the ajar door, where fresh air blows. Neighbors say that sometimes he goes out into the yard, walks around the house and inspects the surroundings, as if checking that everything is in order and whether there are any new intruders. As soon as he catches something suspicious, he instantly emits a low hissing sound, reminiscent of a battle cry. This is a warning to all strangers. Stay away. This is my home and my family. Biology and habits of a bobcat. Expanded education. If you delve into the features of bobcat biology, you can find many interesting details. This cat belongs to the cat family and has several subspecies distributed in different regions of North America. Despite the fact that in the scientific world bobcats are considered relatively small representatives of wild cats, in reality they look very massive due to dense and long wool. Externally, bobcats have a round head, a short muzzle and wide-set eyes, and their paws, although short, are distinguished by thick pads, allowing them to confidently walk on snow and stones. The hunting habits of bobcats are also noteworthy. In their natural environment, they prey on rodents such as pikas and voles, and can also feed on birds if they live nearby. Interestingly, bobcats prefer to track down prey, hiding in rocks or thickets, and can sit in ambush for hours until a convenient moment to attack. Due to this caution and stealth in nature, seeing a bobcat is not easy. Few people can boast of meeting this animal, as it avoids human eyes. Taming a bobcat in a domestic environment is an extremely rare occurrence. Usually, even if people take a bobcat kitten to themselves, it is difficult and sometimes impossible to raise a gentle pet from it. The animal can retain wild instincts, attack people, and cause harm. That is why the story with Agnes and her fluffy guardian looks so amazing. Here we see how a wild creature is able to live in relative harmony with a human. The future of wild cats in domestic walls. Of course, there are animal rights organizations that are wary of the idea of keeping bobcats at home. Some experts are categorically against it, pointing out that wild animals need space, access to their usual food, special conditions, and in an apartment or even in a country house these conditions are difficult to provide. However, specifically for this grandmother, the story turned out for the better. She saved a cat who, perhaps, was expected to die, and he, in turn, demonstrated his willingness to protect the owner. It must be remembered that any wild animal is a huge responsibility. A bobcat cannot be treated as a simple, exotic toy. His power, sharp habits, and predatory character require not only knowledge, but also sincere love and a calm approach. In Agnes' case, she may have intuitively found the key to him. Of course, this does not negate the fact that the bobcat can remain unpredictable. The animal is capable of changing its mood in an instant, and if someone disturbs it too persistently, aggression is possible. However, a warm connection with the owner seems to have formed with him in earnest. The further fate of Agnes Bobcat. Many, hearing about the incident, wonder, what will happen if the bobcat decides to leave the house one day and return to the wild? Experts say that if the animal has lived too long next to a person and is accustomed to domestic comfort, he may face difficulties in the wild. After all, in nature he will have to hunt again, defend himself from larger predators, and survive on his own without Agnes' caring hands. On the other hand, the instincts of a bobcat can take over if he awakens the call of his ancestors' blood. The story is supplemented by the opinion of neighbors. Some say that Agnes Defender has repeatedly tried to go beyond the outskirts of the village, but each time returned to the warm house, to a bowl of food and affectionate hands. So far, no incidents involving aggression towards residents of the town have been recorded. On the contrary, the cat became friends with two other Agnes pets, although at first they were very afraid of their formidable tribesmen. Gradually, they became slightly less anxious because the bobcat does not attack them if he is not provoked. True, from time to time he can raise his upper lip and hiss. This is his way of establishing a hierarchy and showing that he is the elder or, at least, the more powerful member of the cat company. Agnes tries to carefully monitor the interaction and, if she sees that a conflict is starting, immediately intervenes, calming the cats with a kind word and giving them treats to distract and defuse the situation. Conclusions. Can a wild cat remain domestic? This whole story from Montana reminds us that there is nothing absolutely impossible in life. It would seem that a wild cat with a threatening hiss and powerful claws should not fit into the life of a meek grandmother. But reality can be more amazing than fairy tales. The care that came from the heart did its job. The bobcat, who looked aggressive, turned into a faithful defender and managed to stop the criminal actions of the intruders. His claws and fangs, capable of tearing prey in the conditions of wild hunting, unexpectedly served for the benefit of domestic security. Although everything is possible in this world, and no one can guarantee that the bobcat will not show his harsh nature someday, many want to believe that everything will remain as it is. After all, examples with hyenas in Africa illustrate that nature is not so unambiguous. There are cases when the most ferocious predators recognize a person as their ally. Maybe our bobcat will always value the hands that fed him in a hungry hour, and the house where he finds warmth and peace. Leave your opinion in the comments. What do you think? Is there a chance that wild cats like bobcats can spread as exotic pets? Will they become commonplace or remain rare? Share your thoughts. Do you believe in a long-term friendship between a human and such an independent predator? Or do you still think that nature will take over, and one day the cat will break free, showing its true essence? We are interested in hearing different points of view, because issues related to the domestication of wild animals always cause controversy and debate. Tell us in the comments if you have ever encountered stories of taming wild cats like bobcats, and how you feel about this practice. Share your impressions of the brave act of the gray cat, who saved the grandmother and neutralized the bandits. Perhaps such devotion is an exception to the rule, or perhaps we all greatly underestimate the ability of animals to mutual love and trust. Additional considerations for future generations. The story of the bobcat and the grandmother from Montana has not only emotional, but also cognitive value. It reminds us of the richness of the animal world, of how diverse human neighbors can be on planet Earth. Sometimes we encounter rare species, not knowing how to interact with them. There are wild cat specialists, there are research institutes, but ordinary people can also contribute to the conservation and understanding of biological diversity. It is only important to remember that taking a wild animal into your home is a serious step that requires a conscious approach. A bobcat is not a toy or an interior decoration. Whoever decides on such a responsible step is responsible for his well-being. Let's hope that our heroine will be able to take care of her unusual pet in the future, receiving his loyalty and protection in return. After all, this touching story can inspire many to take care of nature, to be kind to those who need help, and to want to appreciate different forms of life. Thus, the story of the fluffy defender clearly proves that cats are able to say thank you not only with a quiet purr, but also with decisive actions. And although bobcats, as a rule, remain wild, here we see a unique exception where the animal chose the path of loyalty to a kind-hearted grandmother. Who knows, maybe this is not the last amazing story that will happen in the vastness of our country. Because life is full of miracles, especially where you least expect them.